I'm just like, fuck, dude, I hope people have been like fucking with it. But, oh, dude, has it brought me to meet some cool people? Dude, dude, you know what?
I was waiting for him to get back on top.
God damn. So, my name's Zach Edgar. Since I was like 12 years old, I've been known as Zed, just given to me by my homies. Zach Edgar was Zedgar, and then Zed. But I'm from Indiana, Pennsylvania, with that being said, where IUP is, basically. It's like 60 miles east of Pittsburgh. And well, I guess this is like my hobby turned kind of like business now. So my grandma was a huge garage sailor. And honestly, I never really thought about it too much. It's just part of your childhood where it's just like just memories that you have. And like my grandma passed away like this year. So like, and I started doing this, like I started the Zeds, I was like, fuck it, I might as well have. I've been eBaying for a minute, but I was like, I might as well have an Instagram. I started it like a year and a half ago. So it was really then where I was like reflecting, like she like really like got me into that. Like she would take us to flea markets and just, that's where I remember just like looking around at like shit and like, you know what I mean? And so really from then, and I actually remember like garage sales basically, just shit where you're like stuck with your grandma, but then she takes you to do like some super dope shit, like go to the flea market and then get McDonald's. Like looking back at it, that's super sick. Like, so I was doing it in Indiana for a while. That's when I started like the my Instagram, Zeds Vintage Threads. But I was selling on eBay when I was working at Plato's. So then I moved to Pittsburgh for barber school, and that's really like where having the thrift stores like so readily available. It's like, I don't know. And it was something that I'm passionate about, and like paired with the opportunity to make like some good money, like straight off come ups, like that's when it started becoming like a daily, like in the daily regimen. But I don't go daily per se. It just depends on like if I have time, like I'll stop in, but I'm pretty consistent with it. And like that's the thing. Kind of from when I started being at Plato's and like seeing the behind the scenes, and then like kind of like paying attention to like how a thrift store like operates, and you kind of like, you know, you don't want to like overpick a place and whatnot. So I'm not like to the point where I don't pay attention to like, I don't have like a schedule or anything. It's like I just like go. It's like, oh, I feel like going to this. But being in Pittsburgh with like how the roads are, I definitely, when I go out, I want to hit like a couple spots. So I do try to like hit, you know, go to like a couple areas. And that's the thing, dude, like people will hit me and be like, and I'll post where I am, and like I'll tell people where I am. I don't give a fuck. Like I'm not hiding anything. And that's the thing with thrifting is like, it's funny for people that like, or if anyone's competitive about it, because it's like, dude, is that what it's come to, for real? When I'm flipping through, so like I said, like I've always been like obsessed with like puffy starter jackets. So like I will like not turn down like a starter jacket, as long as it's, you know, got everything. And that's something else I learned with Plato's was like, and you learn through reselling too, is like to check for like every zipper, button, little spots, like, you know, for stuff that's in good condition, because that's like a big part of giving like a, you know, having a good end product for people to like actually fuck with you continuously. I'm like in Pittsburgh and I love Pittsburgh, so like I want to have like, if there's fly Pittsburgh stuff, like I'll always grab it, like, and that's because it's kind of, the goal would be for like people from Pittsburgh to like get their hands on it, because I mean, I guess Steeler Nation is outside of Pittsburgh, but it's like we're here and we have all this like fly ass retro shit. Like we specifically won championships back in the day that they made like really dope gear for. It was like, I feel like that should be, especially with like the vintage wave and whatnot, should be like, why not? So obviously, like I said, obviously Pittsburgh shit. And like anything that like takes me back, like that's like anything that I may have had back in the day. Like I was real big into specific WWF shit, and then obviously like Steelers shit. So like anytime I find something that like I had back in the day, or like I specifically remember seeing and being like, that's super dope, like that is. And like finding a copy of Space Jam, dude, those are like top shit. Like small shit like that. Like a lot of the time I'm not like hoping for like the biggest come up ever, but like finding just like whatever, like if it's like a The Rock or like Stone Cold or Hulk Hogan like toy, or anything that like shit that I just like loved back in the day. One day I was like high as shit scrolling on Google and like saw this Tommy Hilfiger Bugs Bunny collab, and like someone had like a little write-up about it, like the description of like why it existed. It was in the Warner Brothers in like '96 when Space Jam came out and shit. They had like, and someone dressed him in the Tommy shit just because it was relevant at the time, like with, and I posted that and he reposted like both of my shits on his personal account, like both of the posts, the Tommy, the Pillsbury Doughboy and the Bugs Bunny, and like commented me in it, and I was like, thanks for the repost and shit, like, guess that's how that works, right, whatever. And it was like, I'd love to like hear more about this, like, I don't know too much, like, what does he know? And so he like emailed me that day, it was like, let's talk, TH, or whatever. So I was like, well, you know, what do you know, what about the, basically asking, like, can you give me some more insight on, like, the Bugs Bunny? And he was like, no, like, can you, like, fill me in on it? And I was like, I mean, I was like baked and saw it on Google, but like, whatever. So basically just like sent him what I knew based on just Google and shit. And he hit me back. And I don't know, it's just kind of like there's that. I mean, he's aware of and like signed Zeds Vintage. So he's like, and he follows me and shit and whatnot. So I don't know, as far as like meeting other people, that's kind of a wild one. So it wasn't until like post-college when I came back and was like thinking about like what I realistically could like see myself doing. And I always talked about like having a barbershop. Like when I used to cut my friend's hair, I'd be like, dude, we're gonna have a barbershop. Like we're gonna post up, smoke all day, like just jam out, whatever, you know what I mean? Just kind of like unrealistically. Then, you know, I kind of like came to, as I say, I'm 24, so it was like I was like 20, 23, 22, and just kind of like needed to, just like really thought about like what I see myself like being in the future. Like for one of the first times, it's not something that you like think about like that fucking often really, or like, you know what I mean? I don't know, and like some more serious shit. So like that was, barbering is something that I like love doing, and I know it will always be there. And it was like, is always an industry that no matter what happens, who that like per se, just being a realist, like the vintage doesn't like, you know what I mean? It doesn't carry out through when I'm like, you know, in the future. So that was like the barbering was just, is like my absolute, is like my career. So then I basically got real with it and was like, what would I need to like have my own barbershop? So that was like having a barber's license. So I just finished up I finished at IUP, and then let's say it was like 6 months later, I was in barber school, which is like 1,250 hours. It's like a clock hour program, and they say like 9 months. It was like 10 months, and then you just like go through it. And I was thrifting, doing like I was doing my vintage threads posts on like my lunch break, and I would thrift in the morning before, and then like go to a barber shop afterwards, work, thrift after that, come back, like do posts until I fall asleep. It's basically what I've been doing for like a year, but it was just something that I had like for thinking about like what I'll be doing when I'm like old. It was like, I could see that, and also an opportunity to have my own business, and like knowing that that's like I would have a space that always brought in money like through that, I guess. I think with mixing potentially having like a little like area with a couple racks and hats and shoes, that you really wouldn't want like much more than that, and making it like a point as far as like cutting it would just be a balance that I would have to find, like, and at first being like appointment only with the barbering, so that I'm still able to work with the clothes. And like realistically though, I do have like a business plan like down, and I've been looking for spaces for a reasonable price, and like location is key and shit. So I don't know, man. That's like wheels are turning. Might as well. You can't say someone's got to do it. So basically, hopefully 2018 move. We'll see. So you can find me at Zeds Vintage Threads on Instagram. My eBay is in the bio, but just hit me up. You know what I mean? It's easier that way. I'm a nice guy. Just slide in the DM real quick. We'll get up.